years ago, Judd asked me to introduce a pair of authors, and he gave me a book, 2,600 pages. I read the book cover to cover, prepared, I had notes, I had a wonderful introduction, and the night before, both authors got COVID. I am so glad you guys are here. It is my honor and privilege to introduce Sam and Chris here on How to Win Friends and Influence Fungi, a collection of one of my favorite things to do, which is nerd out. And I was told you're going to hear about diarrhea, animal sex, and peritoneum. And I'll leave them to explain all that. Without further ado, Matt and Chris.
All right. Hey, it's me. All right, so the way this is going to go, we have several people who will be talking at you for the next 48 and a half minutes or so. My name is Matt. That's not particularly important or interesting, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about why you're all here. And as Chris announced earlier, so we've got slides for a lot of you. You're back at school. So like I said, we only have a monitor, so keep looking over here and it'll work better that way. All right, so Chris and I run an organization called Nerd Nite. We've been running this since 2003, and essentially it is a presentation series that we do. We hold a monthly event in about 110 cities around the globe each month. These events are performed at comedy clubs and music venues and art spaces and breweries, where basically three people come up and they give presentations for about 20 minutes each about whatever subjects they are experts in. But the presentations are always delivered very humorously and accessibly. There's lots of usually drinking and swearing and dad jokes involved to make learning a little bit more fun and accessible for everyone. It sort of started as an accident 21 years ago in Boston, and it sort of took off after that. I guess good things happen when there are planned or happy accidents. The weird thing about this is, so we've got a tagline, Nerd Nite, be there and be square. We also have an unofficial tagline, which is Nerd Nite. It's like the Discovery Channel with beer. It's a little antiquated because Discovery Channel is sort of, I guess, less relevant now than it was in 2003. But I say that because this is interesting, is that this is a dry Nerd Night, which is extraordinarily unusual for us. So pretend, except for you four here, you should continue to not drink. For everyone else who can, pretend that you're having a beer or cocktail or glass of wine right now, and we'll be much more entertaining that way. We'll skip to the important things. So I just want to point out a couple of fun things how we got here. So Nerd Nite started in Boston in 2003. It spread to New York in 2006. And then after that, it grew quickly in 2009. And as I said, we're in over 100 cities globally now. And what's been kind of fun about this is that over the years, as this weird thing that we do kind of grew, we had lots of opportunities, many failed opportunities to kind of do bigger and better things with this. We had briefly had a magazine. We had different offers for TV shows and things, but we never really wanted to take the next step. We wanted to kind of have it just be this sort of goofy, fun thing that we do on the side. But then a couple of years ago, we were approached by a fancy publisher who said, do you ever have a book ideas? I'm like, yes, we have lots of ideas for things. But then it actually progressed and became something meaningful and tangible and worthwhile. So we're here today to talk about our first ever book. As we said, How to Win Friends and Influence Fungi, collected quirks of science, tech, and engineering and math from Nerd Nite. It just rolls right off of the tongue. But the book is a collection of 71 of our favorite presentations from around the globe since we started doing this in 2003. We've had somewhere between 18 and 22,000 presentations. We've recorded like 40 of them ever. Because, why record something valuable and let people be able to see it? Why would you want to do that? So it was kind of a fun process where, as you said, and you'll see too many examples of these in a second, it was a fun process of taking presentations that are done visually and performancely and trying to actually put them into word form. But we think we did a pretty good job of it. We have lots of very quirky, funny, interesting stories in this book. They're all each story in the book are just 3 to 5 pages each, so it's a very sort of accessible, digestible thing that you should hopefully all enjoy. So we've got Pete here and then Chris for the next couple minutes. They're each going to talk for 10 minutes. They're going to do a very mini version of their previous presentations that are also in the book. So Pete is going to come up. He's going to talk about stomatopods. Why is my thumb bleeding and my mind blown. And then Chris is going to come up after that. All right. Actually, I guess I'm ready for you. Then Chris is going to talk about birds. So Pete's going to talk for Smad Pods about 10 minutes. Pretend you're all just mostly drunk right now or tipsy, except for you four. Again, you're not allowed to be drunk or tipsy for many, many years. Okay? All right. Your parents know you're here. All right. Hey, it's Pete. Hey.
Hello. Can you hear me? Okay. That's a lot of pressure, Matt. Thanks for making it sound like I'm going to be funny here. I don't claim to be funny. I do claim to be nerdy. I am a biology nerd, and therefore you are going to hear about one of my favorite organisms on the planet today. Let's get started. This delightful creature here is called a stomatopod. And I want you to pay special attention to the eyes. It's guarding its eggs underneath its chest there. We are not seeing any of the text. This will be fun. All right. This is a broader look at the stomatopod, and what you should notice is that at the front they sort of have an arm that reaches out in front of it, and two eyes that come out the top. And those two features of this animal have two world records. They are the most complex eyes in the animal kingdom, and they have the fastest attack strike in the animal kingdom. And we'll get to that eventually. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about them before we get there, so bear with me. I'm going to try and go through this quickly. They're commonly called mantis shrimp, and you can see that sort of that front attack appendage looks a lot like a praying mantis, and they kind of have a body plan of a shrimp as well. But these are much cooler than either of those, so I don't think that is an appropriate common name for them. They've also been called sea locusts. Sea locusts bring to mind the plague or something that is unwanted, and I think you all should want one of these in your house just to watch them every day. So that's not an appropriate name either. The most appropriate name for these creatures is the thumb splitter. And this is how I learned about this creature. Someone was telling me a story about these fisher people who would be out pulling in their nets. They'd be sorting through their catch, and all of a sudden one of them would scream, and there would be blood flowing, and they would have a hole in their leather gloves. And it was because of these little creatures called stomatopods. There are a couple different versions of them. They are broadly defined by their attacking appendage. There are the spearers, and those you can see on the upper side. It has like a pitchfork, and that can be thrust out very quickly, and that's the one that will actually go through a leather glove. That form typically preys on things that swim past, so small fish, things of that nature. But the ones that hold all the records are the smashers, the ones at the bottom there. And so that club-like appendage there, they stun their prey through stunning blows. And basically, they can crack shells. They're basically hunting mollusks, so snails, clams, oysters, things of that nature. And so they have to get through a very hard shell, and that's how they've developed this amazing adaptation. So I have subtitled this, What's Up with Those Eyes and Why Is My Thumb Bleeding? Let's go to it. These organisms have been around for about 400 million years, and for the last 200 million years, they've been in basically the exact same form. That just goes to show how successful this form is. If you can maintain the same basic form, they change colors and get a few different adaptations here and there, but basically they're the same for 200 million years. They live throughout the ocean. Most of them are found in the Indo-Pacific. There are over 500 species, and they come in all different colors. There are those that hide in the muck and those that hide in the sand, but many of them are actually quite brightly colored, and you can find them on your favorite coral reef. They're distributed mostly in tropical zones. They're in the red region, although you can actually find them in in temperate waters, and we have them here in the Chesapeake. And so I've seen little green guys here in nets in the Chesapeake Bay. So keep your eyes out if you're ever fishing in the Chesapeake Bay. Basically, they spend most of their life, like many organisms, fighting over housing, food, transportation, and anything else in their areas. They make their houses in crevices on coral heads, and so there are only a limited supply of these, and they're constantly fighting over them, and so there's a lot of interspecific interactions between these organisms, and so they're quite good at communicating with each other and performing things that give them dominance over others in order to hold on to their houses. They'll eat just about anything that moves, and they get around either by walking around on the surface, and they do have legs to walk around on the surface, but they can also swim quite fast, and they have an escape mechanism where they flip their tail and they can move backwards at about 10 miles per hour, which is pretty impressive underwater if they're under threat. They spend most of their days fighting and hunting, and that is why they need incredible eyesight and a good way to attack things. So let's get to the actual really cool stuff. So the eyes. They need the eyes in order to target their prey and also to have communication with each other. Basically, they are active hunters, so imagine a fish swimming quickly by you, and you have to control basically a loaded gun, and so to target something, you need to be able to see very well in 3 dimensions. So they also live at a variety of depths, and if you've ever been in the water, the deeper you go, you lose more reds and greens until you get only blues and UV, and these organisms can actually see into the UV spectrum, which is quite unique. It's great. And like I said earlier, they communicate with each other, so visual signals are important. They are organized into 2 hemispheres. Basically, you'll see at the top, these are compound eyes, so a bunch of tiny little eyes that come together to form a single image. And at the top and the bottom are rounded surfaces that allow them to see form and motion. So those are going to be how they target things. And then across the middle, you can see sort of a straight 6 straight lines across the middle of each eye, and that's called the midband, and those have 6 specialized rows which are there to perceive color and polarization. And so one of the very unique things about these organisms is that they can see polarized light. For those of you who are fishermen, you know that glare on water is a huge deal. It blinds you when you're trying to see fish that are underwater. Well, it's no different if you're underwater, so they use polarized light actually to communicate with their mates, and they have sort of signaling devices on their shoulders that they can flash at their mates to let them know where they are and so forth. Makes them even cooler. The result is trinocular vision from a single eye. They have 2 eyes that move independently, ultimately resulting in hexnocular vision. If that's not a nerdy word, take that home and use that in conversation. So they have remarkable 3-dimensional vision, which they can target their prey. They have 16 different types of photoreceptors. Humans have 8. So they see a much broader range of colors, but they don't really focus on the divisions between those colors. They're really focused on things that move, and in order to control their strike. Their visual system is optimized for speed rather than distinguishing between those similar colors. And so therefore, we have this remarkable adaptation that leads to the attack. And so let's get into the attack. 3 minutes, all right. Time's moving quickly. All right. So the attack, what makes it so incredible? So it has been clocked at 23 meters per second. That is 51 miles per hour. That is underwater. The acceleration is 10,800 times the speed, the acceleration of gravity. And so basically what's happening is it's going from 0 to 50 miles per hour in less than 2 milliseconds. that is remarkable, especially considering that you're going through water as a medium. Think about the resistance that's there. This is what the force plot looks like, and this is where the really cool science comes in. Basically, what I want you to see in this is focus on the black line, and as you move across the bottom, which is time, this is a total of 3 milliseconds, there is not one, but 2 force peaks. So you'll see at 1.25 milliseconds when you actually make contact with the target, there's a strike that's 500 newtons in strength. That is approximately the equivalent of a 300-pound linebacker standing on your toe. Then there's a second peak of 225 newtons, which is equivalent to about a 125-pound person standing on your toe. And you need to take into account that this is happening through the surface contact area, basically the head of a nail. So very intense, strong strike over a very small area. Just unbelievable, happening in water. It's a remarkable piece of bioengineering. Basically, there are 2 planes of rotation that allow the strike to extend out further than you might think it would go. I'm going to skip the details on that. All of the energy is stored in a saddle-like body part right at the base of what's basically the shoulder. And basically, if you think about a horse saddle, if you tried to bend it, it will resist you in 2 different ways. You can't bend it up, you can't bend it sideways. It's storing energy in both ways. And so this saddle structure can hold all the energy that's required in order to generate that remarkable acceleration and force of at the hit. All of this is capped off by a second peak in force, which comes because the strike is so fast that when it strikes its target, it actually rips the water apart, forming small bubbles. These bubbles are called cavitation bubbles. They're notorious for eating propellers on boats. You have to get your propellers on boats replaced because of these small bubbles. And basically, when those bubbles collapse in on themselves, they release light. And if you look at D, where that arrow is, you can see the light being formed. It releases light and heat, ultimately resulting in that second peak force peak of almost 125 pounds on the head of a nail. So I hope you're impressed with these little creatures. I love them. I think they're fantastic. There are a lot of brilliant scientists who have contributed to all of this, and I want to give you all their names, particularly Roy Caldwell, Marjorie Rieka, Tom Cronin, and Sheila Patek. They did all the cool science. And with that, I would love to have questions, or are we just moving on?
Both. All right, so number 1, since we're at the Gaithersburg Book Festival, you see right behind us, I recommend after this, there are 2 lovely people there who will write free haikus for you if you give them a subject. We were there earlier. They asked for a subject. We said shrimp. So I've been withholding it. I've not even looked at it myself. In honor of this, we are going to find out what the free haiku was about shrimp. What should I do? You want to do it?
Yeah, I think you should do it.
I'll do it. All right. Aching grain of sand, insignificant as shrimp in the teal abyss. Hey, I don't know.
There you go.
I thought it was fine. Have any questions about shrimp? Yeah.
For how much energy that saddle-like muscle stores, what do they eat that provides that much energy?
Right. So they're eating mostly protein. So it's all fish or shrimp or snails, clams, small mollusks.
Ooh, in fact, actually, right. Actually, even better. To show that, it's hard to see. So in our book, every 71 contributions has an illustration with it. They were customized for it. This one in the protein. So there is basically on the bottom, I'll describe for everyone, it's a picture of a mantis shrimp that just tore open a snail shell, and the snail is asking very incredulously, was that really necessary? But it was for the shrimp, but not for the snail. One more question about...
Not a shrimp. Stomatopod.
I'm sorry. You see, this happens to me all the time.
Well, actually.
No, I'm not so. As my grandmother always said, you can tell a Wasowski, but you can't tell them much. So it's true. Family joke. Yay! All right. Hey, it's Pete. Round of applause for Pete. All right. So sticking with so at Nerd Nite, one thing that comes up, a very common, a very popular theme of many of the presentations given around the world. Cover your ears, you four. Is procreation. That's how we all got here, how every species around us got here, and evolved and changed over the years. One thing that Chris here studies, he studies a lot of birds. He understands how they procreate. So we may or may not learn a little bit about that now, but also we're going to learn a little bit about all the questions you may have wondered about birds, but were afraid to ask. So let's find out.
I'll
a
be
little
ready
bit.
to answer them.
All right, you should. All right, let's learn a little bit about birds. Birds. You've all seen them. They're real.
Yeah, thanks everyone for being here. My name is Chris Balakrishnan, and I'm going to talk to you about birds. And in the book, I tried to answer three main questions that I commonly get about birds. The first of those is, are birds dinosaurs? And the answer to that is yes. And so the picture there, for those of you who can't see it, is of a cassowary, which is a really scary bird. And if you see one, you will know that dinosaurs are alive today and among us. And there's really no doubt. You can see that you go to a zoo, look at a cassowary, that's a dinosaur. The other question I often get, as Matt alluded to, is how do birds have sex? Like, people are weirdly curious about the mechanics of how this works, but that's actually not what I'm going to talk about today. You have to read the book to find out. And the question that I also get that I don't really get is what is a parasitic bird? And so this is something I study, a brood parasitic bird. These are birds that lay their eggs in the nests of other birds, other species of birds, and that's something that I research on, but it's also not what I'm going to talk about today. Today what I'm going to talk about is another question that one could ask, which is, we all know that birds sing. You can hear them singing now. They're loud in the morning this time of year, and they may wake you up and annoy you. But birds sing. Why don't they dance? We like, singing and dancing both together. Why don't they dance? Yeah, it's a good question, right? I know. It's not really a question people ask me. It's just something I wanted to talk about. But they do dance. They do dance. And so that's what I'm going to show you and talk to you about today. And again, this is a presentation with videos, and for those of you who can't see the video, I'm maybe going to have to dance myself, so this could get weird. All right, let's see if this actually works, and if anyone can see any video. Yeah, so the first video I'm going to show here is of a kind of bird called a bird of paradise. And these are native to New Guinea, and there's one species in Australia. This is called a rifleman bird, and what you're going to see is a male doing a really and then so it's got this crazy. I know, it's too much. But what's cool, I chose this video because the female and the male actually have like this coordinated posture thing that they're doing, and I just think it's like so amazing. And the male has this like iridescent plumage in the throat that it's just sort of perfectly placed to make this sort of bizarre pattern. And so these birds of paradise are a group of birds that, among all of them, they've evolved these really complex striking displays. And this is a video taken by some folks at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and they had a sort of a roving museum exhibit, but you can see at birdsofparadise.org all these different the displays and great photos of these birds that are really hard to capture because they're in the tops of trees in New Guinea. So this is another group of birds, the manakins. These are in Central and South America. These are birds that I actually do research on. That is a separate group of birds that's evolved really, really complicated and fancy displays. And so you might be able to hear there's like a clicking sound here. So the male is the brightly colored one, and it's flitting back and forth between the branches. But the crazy thing is that it's making that sound by slapping its wings behind its head at like an incredibly high rate of speed. There's also a buzzing sound that's caused by kind of vibrating its feathers. And here this is slowed down into with high speed video, and you can sort of see just how rapidly the bird is slapping its wings together behind its head. And again, this is a group of somewhere like 60, 70 species where in that whole radiation of birds, they've evolved all different kinds of crazy, fancy dances. And so, much like the mantis shrimp, the underlying sort of evolution that has led to this is really, it's really amazing. And it's really, these birds that are slapping their wings behind their head have evolved these muscles that twitch basically at one of the fastest speeds among vertebrate animals. So their muscles have been so highly modified that they just vibrate at a higher speed than any muscles basically in the animal kingdom. And they also they have unique adaptations in vision, just like we were hearing before. So the main point I wanted to make. Those aren't birds, no. When we think about evolution, we often think about survival of the fittest, animals killing each other and whatnot. But again, as sort of as Matt alluded to before, it's really not all about animals eating each other, especially in the animal kingdom. It's a lot of it is about reproduction and who gets to mate and who doesn't get to mate and what traits are preferred by females. And it is that pressure, that pressure of mate choice that we call, sexual selection, that leads progressively to these incredibly complex displays. And so I have one more video. This is another mannequin. And this is one of the birds. This is known as the moonwalking mannequin. And you'll see why in a second. And for those of you who can't see this, YouTube is chock full of these videos. And this one also does... and this is real, like evolution did this. Like it's really crazy. And so this is also one of these species that has those really modified muscles. They also have modified wing bones for that slapping behind there. That's doing the slap thing right there. So I think I meant to put text on this side, but the punchline is that it's really all about survival of the sexiest, and this bird is clearly the sexiest. And I think that's all I have. So I.
First takeaway is I don't know how many of you have ever heard birds described as sexy before, so I'm glad you could learn something new here. But do you have any basic questions? So normally these would be much longer and more in depth, but we're trying to give you a short wetting your beaks, so to speak. Would that make sense? Question.
Yeah, how does the speed of the clapping compare to a hummingbird, which seems incredibly fast too?
Those are the two winners, but I think these wing muscles are faster than the hummingbird wing muscles. This is the sort of issue that leads to controversies among scientists competing.
You're causing fights.
Competing for whose study species has the fastest muscles. So the people that do that muscle physiology, I think this is a sensitive issue. So I'm gonna not speak too confidently on who's faster. Yeah, so that they those species that do that actually have evolved like bigger forewing muscles, and so these sorts of traits that evolve like that, you can imagine you're growing this big forelimb muscle, and I mean this big forelimb bone. There's trade-offs basically is what I'm trying to say. So, sexual selection is pushing birds, in this case, towards these new weird characteristics that may not be good for things like flight. And so over evolutionary time, it's sort of a balancing of those trade-offs between the goal of reproducing and siring offspring and the other goal of natural selection more broadly, of not getting eaten. But they just have weird bones.
So do you have like a bird that you were just like, I really love this bird, like this bird call and everything like that, and it's like just something that you really like?
Yeah, definitely. So so I started getting into birds when I was in undergrad, and so in college, and I took a tropical field ecology class just on a whim. I realized I could get credit for a class where I got to go to the tropics, and it met during the summer, but I got a fall credit for it, so I didn't have to take a class in the fall. So I was one class down in the fall and in Panama.
Higher
in the
education.
summer.
Yeah.
It was awesome. But I saw these mannequins there, and I was like, this is crazy. But it actually took me like 20 years or something before I actually got to do research on mannequins. So they are actually one of my favorite birds. And the other birds that I'm really into are these brood parasitic birds in general. They have this bizarre behavior that they don't lay their eggs in their own nest, but lay their eggs in other species' nests. But pitahuis are really weird also because I think they actually have like a toxin in their feathers. So they're actually people study them for understanding that. So they have really weird biology besides making cool noises that you described. Yeah.
So my question's a little bit related to his. When he said we don't have any cool birds here, my question was, given the cool traits that you're talking about, what would you say for North American, like specifically maybe Eastern birds? What do you think is really cool?
Oh, okay. All right. So I didn't fully answer the previous question, and okay, I'll tell you another bird that I really like. But I'm afraid I'm going with the birds that I've done actual research on here. So
he's very biased.
There's probably other examples, but so the white-throated sparrow is something that you can hear now, and it looks really boring, right? It looks like a brown, very basic bird. But the biology in the white-throated sparrow is actually really complicated, and so we refer to it as the bird with 4 sexes. So most species, as you might know, most species that reproduce sexually only have 2 sexes. And so there's basically 2 morphs of this bird, a white morph and a tan morph. And there's white morph males and tan morph males and white morph females and tan morph females. And they only mate oppositely. So like always, you have to mate with the opposite type of morph no matter what you are. And so they have a weird thing in their chromosomes.
Can you explain morph to the crowd?
The white version or the tan version. So those are the 2 morphs, the white and the tan, and so that's controlled by a change in their genome that acts like basically another set of sex chromosomes. So humans, we have X and Y chromosomes. Birds have something slightly different, W and Z chromosomes, and these birds basically have another set of sex chromosomes that determines if they're like a white morph bird or a tan morph bird. And so it's just really bizarre. It's really bizarre biology, and those genetic changes then control their mate preferences, which lead them to always choose the morph, the color that is the opposite of what they are. So this is a bird you can see like everywhere that has just really, really weird underlying biology that teaches us about how genes control behavior, how genes and hormones interact to lead to really different forms in nature, and the interaction between like the environment and your genetics and how you act. Yeah, the question is, do the morphs look different to us? Yeah, the white morphs have a really prominent white stripe on their head, and the tan morphs do not. So the white morphs are really, really easy to distinguish from the tan morphs. Yeah.
Sorry, now you made us interested in the morphs. What happens if they actually mate with like male and female of the same morph? Like, is the baby not viable, or?
Yeah, this is a really, really good question, and it's complicated. But it happens very rarely. It happens very, very. So the question is, what happens if things don't go according to plan, and you get a white morph mating with a white morph and a tan morph, or a tan morph mating with a tan morph? This is thank you. This has been recorded a few times, and it seems like, so the white morphs are actually more aggressive in general, and if you get a white morph white morph mating, the offspring of that morph are these like super aggressive like birds that actually may have deleterious consequences in parental care and other behaviors. The tan morph situation is one that has really rarely been documented, and so in that case we do think there's actually bad genetic consequences for when they mate together, and so we maybe never see those offspring.
All right, we've got 10 minutes, so we want to get all of you involved a little bit. So there's a QR code up on the screen. You have seen the 2 titles of the presentation today. Why is my thumb missing and my mind blown? And birds, something, are they real?
Everything you wanted to know about birds.
Everything you want to know, right?
Are they real?
If you think you are witty and clever enough in the next 5 minutes, and can come up with alternative titles for those 2 presentations, scan the QR code, put them down, and we will award 2 books to the funniest, cleverest alternative titles. So scan that QR code. You've got like 5 minutes to do that. What should we talk about for 5 more minutes? For 6 minutes? Really, we're going to pull back the cover here on how the publishing world works. Don't record this. So when the idea of this book came about from our publisher and our literary agent, we had to. So we had to put it, we had to make about a 20-page formal book proposal that included very exciting things like the audience reach of Nerd Nite globally. They wanted to know if we had a market to which we could promote the book. We had to include cities in which Nerd Nite was in. We had to include samples and illustrations of what the book might look like. And while we were putting the proposal together, we didn't have a title for the book. So our agent just like, all right, well, let's just call it How to Win Friends and Influence Bacteria. We'll get to that in a second. And we just submitted it because it was just a placeholder. It was not going to stick. And then as the book was submitted and we turned the manuscript in, everything was basically done. We went back to our publisher and we're like, all right, well, we've got the whole thing delivered for you like 6 months early. We were on the ball. And the last thing we're like, well, we still don't have a title. And that's the only thing that we're missing. And our publisher is like, what do you mean? We have the title. It's How to Win Friends and Influence Bacteria. We're like, no, that was just a placeholder. And then, so it had been an incredibly smooth editorial process for like 12 months. Like we worked collaborated, great collaboration, great feedback all the way through. We had the title thing. Publisher immediately calls me. He's like, I'm not going to really give you an ultimatum, but if we can't use that title, it's kind of a deal breaker. We kind of bought the book because of the title. I was like, huh. That was unexpected and very sternly worded. We had to change bacteria to fungi for a long irrelevant reason. But that was it was basically a whim by our agent that somehow stuck, and then we got almost legally threatened to keep it. So that's where the title came from. Yay!
People like the title. So
Yeah.
It's a good title.
Right. I think so too.
The book company is probably right on this issue.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, we thought it was a placeholder. Apparently we were wrong. So, all right. What else? Ask us questions about the book. Please, I'm so desperate to talk about it. Oh. That was a joke. Hi.
How do you convert PowerPoint presentation to book form?
Oh, that's also a good question. How do you convert? How do you do? Poorly? I don't know. Well, you have to judge for yourself. So the fun part about it, which it's actually very sad that she could not be here. So, as you can see, these are all obviously very visual presentations. It's very visually focused medium. And so to convert it to text form was kind of weird. So we actually were like, well, we need to at least have an illustration for each segment to just have some visual representation, make it a little bit more digestible. And so it was actually pretty fun. So we ended up actually interviewing, we had 10 to 12 different illustrators that we had to audition for it, and they had submit samples and all this, and then we kept whittling it down, and then we picked a winner, and you can talk about the winner, Kristen, who was supposed to be here, but then she just moved. She lived in Alexandria, and Arlington. She moved away last week, so she could not be here to show off her illustrations.
Yeah, so our illustrator in this book is Kristen Orr, and I think she did a really amazing job. She is a graduate of the Rhode Island School of Design, where she got a design degree, but then she did a master's degree in biology after that, and so she really gets like both the science and the design aspects, and she does a lot of work in like museum exhibit design and things like that. So we worked really closely with her to translate the science into the illustrations with a touch of humor on top of that, and so that was really critical to the whole process. I think, but that was the big challenge is translating these live performances where there's a lot of nuance and humor into the written page, and I think we did pretty good.
Yeah, but we can't see you dance though in the book though.
I know. Nor videos, but
right.
We'll
this is
work
why
on
it's
it.
important to come to the live show. So I should say, Nerd Nite DC has been happening since 2011. It happens at a place called DC9. And then Nerd Nite Baltimore is being revived. It was around from 2015 to 2019. But then a pandemic shut down. But it's starting again up on a monthly basis in August, I believe. So for all the Baltimore folks, it's coming back as well. So you're in good hands. Let's find out what some of you all wrote. Thanks for the audience participation here. All right, so question number 1. Write an alternative presentation title for Stomatopods. Why is my thumb bleeding and my mind blown? By Peter C. Thompson, PhD. Hey, Pete, why don't you come up and read some alternative titles? And then we're going to do the old applause meter, and we're going to judge you. So, also, since we're at a literary festival, I can complain about this for a second. Weird tangent. So, I've had this weird bug up my ass for like 5 years about the word judge. I feel like judging is a neutral term. You can judge things positively, and so I'm very frustrated that being judgy is always viewed as the negative way. But like, I don't know. I'm judging Pete now. I thought his presentation was great. That's nice. So why can't we positively judge people? I don't know. So I feel the word judging needs. We need to take it back. It needs to be. You can judge things, right? So anyways, that's my tirade. That's it. All right.
All right. And
all right. We're gonna read alternative presentation titles. Start
right
there.
Just to be clear, we're judging them, not judging me, right?
We're going to positively, actually we'll positively and
positively
moderately judge you.
All right.
Right.
All right. TLDR, One Punch Man, but he's a fish and he sees UV.
Yep.
Stomatopods, way cooler than shrimp.
Someone's sucking up. Someone's saying.
Fastest punch in the world. Saddle up. Rainbows, blood, and murder. The danger shrimp. Stomatopod, people. Shrimp equals slaps of doom. My fists can shatter glass. The world's fastest bites. The wrongly named shrimp. Oh, that's my favorite. So
you're in charge. Does that say your favorite?
No, I got to go with the modern TLDR, One Punch Man, but he's a fish and he sees UVs.
All right, who wrote that? Congratulations, you win a book. Do not use that to harm crustaceans of any kind. All right. Next up. Where did we go? Oh God. Why can't I get? Let's try again. 2. All right. Right, an alternative presentation title for Everything You Always Want to Know About Birds by Dr. Chris and Balakrishnan.
I misread alternative as alliterative. Sexual selection supersedes stomach satisfaction.
Wow. That's a positive mistake.
Off to a good start. Dance like no birdies watching. Birds dancing, clapping, and getting it on. Birds that sing also clap. I'm not biased, but some birds are better than others. Oh boy. I don't know if I get this one. Genetically, birds are sexier than you, and here's why. Is that a literary humor that I don't understand? Oh, genetically. Okay, yeah, that makes much more sense. I'm too sexy for my beak. How sexual selection rules the bird world. I'm too sexy for my feathers. Huh? Right said Fred is. Have you considered sexy dancing birds? The regular birds and the badass birds. Birds are sexy. No, really. She likes it when I dance. How birds stay alive. Survival of the sexiest. Survival of the sexiest. Feathers, flight, and flirting. Dance like the wings are watching. A dating guide for birds. All right. I'm going to go with the first one. I misread alternative as alliterative. Sexual selection supersedes stomach satisfaction. Very well done.
Hey! Great. My phone. 5 minutes. What should we do for 5 minutes? More dancing impersonation. Can you do any more bird dancing impersonations?
No, someone else can do something.
Can someone else do a bird dancing impersonation? Do we have a book left?
No. We do.
Oh yeah, we got a book left. I saw your. So that's officially the crane, so, right? I guess that's not really a dance, more than a murder move, or do you think the Karate Kid was Daniel LaRusso or Johnny? Yeah, I don't know. I can see it both ways. That's why I was. Anyways, sorry. Shouldn't talk about Karate Kid at a Nerd Nite show.
So Matt.
I don't know.
Matt.
What?
So I think we may have given the impression that this is a book about biology. What are some other topics that are covered?
Excellent question.
Great question. Why don't we actually, yeah, here, where's that book? All right, here's just a fun snippet of things that you might find in this book. So first, it is broken into 10 convenient chapters, which each have 6 or 7 or 8 contributions. I'm trying to do this, and this is working great. Why don't you read the things in dark?
Okay.
I could have done that.
Oh yeah. Okay. You're gonna hold the microphone.
I don't know yet.
Okay, so these are the main sections of the book within which there are sub-chapters or something. The first is creature features, which is sort of like what we were just doing. Then there's a chapter called brains. So that's the sort of neuroscience-y brain stuff. Then there's a very exciting chapter called bodily fluids. You can guess what that's about. There's a chapter called doing it.
I will. In the bodily fluid, so there's an audiobook version of this. We wrote chapter introductions for each section. I had to write a lot of diarrhea jokes in the introduction, and then I was telling my aunt this. So my mother was an English teacher. She was very proper, very stern. In the audiobook recording of it, I had to say diarrhea 36 times and make the sound. And in most takes during the audiobook process, I did most things in 1 or 2 takes, so it was very efficient. For some reason, I had to do that one. That was the only time I do 4 takes of it. And my mother, she passed away a few years ago. I could feel her rolling her eyes and just she was so mad at me. And I think it was her fault that I had to do 4 takes because she was, she really stuck it to us.
Health and unwellness, so we have some medical related stuff in there, including the science of the hangover, pathogens and parasites, death and taxes. That chapter is actually really about death. Space. There's a space chapter, a technology chapter, math. And then all importantly, there's a career advice sort of section. So.
Very good stuff. In the space chapter, a lot of it's just about how astronauts go to the bathroom because we all want to know.
That was a challenge.
Yeah, so there are some that overlapped and made sense in both, so we had to make hard decisions. Sophie's choice. It's rough. All right, so thank you for coming. We will be, if you are curious about the book and want to buy it, we will devalue it by signing it. We've got to go to the signing place from 12:15, 12:45. So we promise to scribble something really, I don't know. We'll write something on it, meaningful, with lots of heartfelt messages. Thank you for coming. This was fun. Go to Nerd Nite sometime. Great. Thank you for your help.